4 hot alien widows came seeking shelter. They found a human instead. Dark clouds rolled across the sky of the quiet frontier planet, swallowing the pale sun in minutes. Wind screamed across the empty land, bending metal towers and shaking the ground. Inside an old weather station near the edge of a dry valley, a lone human sat by a small heater, repairing a broken power cell with slow, careful hands. His name was Evan Carter. Evan had lived alone on this forgotten world for almost 3 years. Once he had been a relief engineer for the Human Coalition, sent to rebuild stations and help colonies after disasters. But after too many missions, too many losses, he chose silence instead of space traffic, and isolation instead of crowds. This planet had been marked as low priority. No cities, no wars, just storms, rocks, and time. Tonight even Evan felt uneasy. The sensors on the station flickered. Atmospheric pressure dropped fast. This was no normal storm. Then the sky cracked open. A burning line tore through the clouds, followed by a thunderous roar. Something large screamed through the air and vanished behind the hills. The ground shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. Evan froze. "That was not a meteor," he said quietly. He grabbed his coat, emergency pack, and stepped outside into the howling wind. The storm fought him with every step, but he followed the crash site's direction using instinct and old training. Half an hour later, he saw it. A shattered alien transport lay half buried in the valley, smoke pouring from broken panels. Strange symbols flickered weakly on its hull. The ship was badly damaged, but not destroyed. Evan's heart tightened. "Anyone alive?" he shouted, though he knew they might not understand. The hatch opened with a broken hiss. 4 figures stepped out. They were not human. They were tall, graceful, with skin like polished bronze and eyes that reflected light like glass. Their clothing was torn, marked with ash and long travel. Each of them carried exhaustion in her posture and something heavier in her eyes, grief. They looked at Evan and froze. One of them whispered something in her own language, fear sharp in her voice. A human. The widows of House Viral had been running for weeks. Their world was gone. Their mates, leaders, thinkers, protectors were gone. Their cities burned not by enemy fire but by political silence. When help did not come, evacuation was denied. Their people were labeled expendable. Only 4 ships escaped. Only one survived the storm. And now standing before them was the last being they expected to see. A human male, alone, unarmed. Everything their culture taught them screamed danger. Humans were emotional, unpredictable, too attached, too stubborn, too willing to sacrifice themselves and others for ideals. Evan saw fear flash across their faces and immediately raised his hands, stepping back. "It's okay," he said slowly, calmly. "I'm not armed. I won't come closer." They did not understand his words, but they understood his tone. One of the widows, taller than the others, studied him carefully. Her eyes moved to his empty hands, then to the storm closing in behind them. The wind howled louder. Debris flew through the air. Staying here meant death. She made a decision. She pointed toward the weather station far in the distance. "Shelter?" she asked, her translator cracked, the word barely clear. Evan nodded instantly. "Yes, shelter, come with me." He turned and walked first, showing his back, a sign of trust in human culture. The widows exchanged uncertain looks, then followed. Inside the weather station, the warmth hit them like a memory. The storm raged outside, but the walls held. Evan moved slowly, deliberately. He offered water, emergency blankets. He kept his distance. The widows watched everything. He did not stare, he did not question, he did not demand. One widow finally spoke through her damaged translator. "Why help?" Evan paused, then shrugged gently. "Because you needed it." That answer confused them more than fear ever could. Hours passed. The storm refused to weaken. Evan repaired the heater and placed more power into the station grid. When one widow stumbled from exhaustion, he did not touch her. He simply placed a chair behind her so she could sit safely. They noticed that. They noticed everything. Later, when the storm reached its peak, the widows huddled together near the wall. Evan sat on the opposite side, giving them space. Silence filled the room, heavy but not hostile. Finally, the tallest widow spoke again. "We are widows," she said carefully. "Our mates died." Evan looked at her, pain flickering in his eyes. "I'm sorry," he said. No excuses, no questions, just truth. Something in his voice broke the last of their tension. One by one, the widows relaxed. They did not know it yet, but this storm, this broken ship, and this quiet human would change their future forever. And for the first time since their world fell, they felt something unfamiliar. They felt safe. All night the wind screamed across the valley, shaking the weather station like a living thing trying to tear it apart. Power flickered, lights dimmed, and then steadied again as Evan's repairs held. Inside, the air was quiet. Evan woke first. Years of field work had trained him to rise before trouble. He checked the station systems, moving softly so he would not disturb the guests. The alien ship's emergency beacon was still silent. Its core had survived, but communication was badly damaged. Rescue would not come quickly. Across the room, the four widows slept close together, wrapped in human thermal blankets. Their breathing was slow and uneven. Sleep had not come easily to them, but exhaustion had finally won. Evan watched them for a moment, then looked away. "Rest," he whispered, more to himself than to them. When the widows woke, fear returned at first until they remembered where they were. Shelter, warmth, the human. One of them sat up slowly. Her name was Sail, the tallest and the quiet leader among them. She observed Evan from across the room. He was cooking something over a small heating plate, his back turned, movements calm and careful. Food. The smell was unfamiliar but comforting. Sail spoke softly to the others. "He guards while we sleep." That alone meant something. Evan turned, noticed them awake, and lifted a small container. "It's basic," he said simply, pointing. "Nutrient grains, safe. No animal matter." The translator flickered, then worked. The widows exchanged surprised looks. He had considered their needs without asking. They accepted the food cautiously. It was warm, simple, enough. As they ate, the storm outside softened slightly, but the sensors still warned of danger. Leaving was impossible. They were stuck together. That is when the talking began, not all at once, not easily. Evan fixed the translator with steady hands, opening its casing and adjusting the cracked circuit. He explained what he was doing, even when he was not sure they understood. Humans talked when they worked. It helped them think. One widow, smaller than the rest, watched him closely. Her name was Lyra, once a navigator. She had guided ships through dangerous space currents. Now she studied this human with the same focus. "You live here alone," she said when the translator stabilized. Evan nodded. "Yes." "Why?" he hesitated. "Because," he said slowly, choosing words, "sometimes quiet hurts less than crowds." The widows understood pain. They said nothing. Later, another widow spoke. Keithra, a scientist before her world fell. Her eyes were sharp, curious even through grief. "You fear us?" she asked. Evan looked surprised. Then he shook his head. "No, I respect you." That answer stayed with them. On their world, respect was shown through distance and silence. Among humans, it seemed to be shown through patience. As hours passed, small moments added up. Evan repaired a damaged door seal before anyone asked. He showed them how the station filtered water. He listened when Sail spoke of her lost home, without interrupting or trying to fix the pain. The widows noticed something strange. The human carried his sorrow openly. It was there in his eyes, in the way his hands paused when memories surfaced. He did not hide it. He lived with it. In their culture, grief was private, silent, heavy. Human grief breathed. That evening, the storm weakened enough for Evan to step outside briefly. He checked the alien ship from a distance, confirming it was stable. When he returned, snow and dust clung to his coat. Without thinking, the fourth widow, Marin, rose and offered him a cloth to dry his face. She froze. On her world, offering care carried deep meaning. Evan accepted the cloth gently, unaware of the weight of her action. "Thank you," he said. Marin sat down again, heart racing. Later, the station lights dimmed again. Power reserves were dropping faster than expected. Evan explained the situation calmly. "We can last 2 more days," he said. "After that, I'll have to shut down non-essential systems." "What about heat?" Sale asked. Evan smiled faintly. "Heat stays." The widows looked at each other. He would choose cold and hunger for himself before letting them suffer. That night they shared stories. Not all details, just pieces. Sale spoke of leading survivors during the evacuation, watching ships leave without them. Lyra spoke of guiding her last vessel away while her mate stayed behind to help others. Keithra spoke of knowledge lost, libraries burned, research erased. Marin spoke of children she had taught, now gone. Evan listened. Then, unexpectedly, they asked about him. He told them about disaster zones, broken colonies, and rebuilding places that would never feel whole again. He spoke of a mission where help arrived too late, of people he could not save. Silence followed, not awkward, honest. "You are widowed too," Sale said softly. Evan nodded, in a way. The storm finally began to fade near dawn, sensors stabilized, the sky lightened. Hope returned carefully like a fragile thing. But outside, far beyond the storm, something else moved. A distant signal pulsed once, then vanished. Unseen by all of them, a patrol scanner briefly touched the planet's edge. And somewhere in space, a record updated, unregistered alien survivors detected. Human presence confirmed. Inside the weather station, unaware of what was coming, the widows slept again. This time not from exhaustion, but from trust. The storm clouds thinned, revealing a pale sky stretched wide above the valley. The world outside the weather station looked clean and quiet, as if nothing terrible had ever happened there. But inside, change was already moving. Evan stood near the console, staring at the sensor screen. His jaw was tight. Sale noticed. "You see something," she said. Evan nodded. "Yes, a scan pulse, very faint, very far." Lyra's eyes sharpened. "Rescue? Maybe," Evan said carefully. "Or patrol." The widows fell silent. They knew what patrols meant. On their world, patrols came after the decisions were already made, after help was denied, after their people were marked as losses that did not matter. Keithra folded her hands together. "If they find us, they will not take us home." "They may not take you at all," Evan said quietly. That truth settled heavily in the room. Marin looked at the alien ship on the external camera feed. "Our beacon is damaged." "I can fix it," Evan said. "But once it's active, they will know exactly where you are." Sale met his eyes. "What would you do?" Evan did not answer right away. "I would make sure," he said finally, "that you are not invisible." The widows exchanged looks. On their world, visibility had brought destruction. On a human's world, invisibility felt worse. They decided to wait. Evan spent the day repairing the alien ship's communication core, working slowly and openly. He explained each step, not because they asked, but because that was how humans showed trust. While he worked, the widows talked among themselves. "He does not control," Keithra said quietly. "He does not command," Lyra added. "He stands beside," Marin finished. That was rare. By afternoon, the translator was fully stable. Voices flowed more easily now, emotions clearer. Sale finally spoke of what weighed heaviest. "Our people were told we were too few to matter," she said. "Too scattered, too costly." Evan paused his work. "That logic," he said, "is how humans lost worlds too." They looked at him, surprised. "You?" Sale asked. "Yes," Evan replied. "Humans learned the hard way that numbers don't decide value." That evening the patrol returned. This time the scan lingered. The station alarms chimed softly. Evan straightened. "They're closer." Fear rippled through the widows, but it did not turn into panic. "What do we do?" Lyra asked. Evan took a breath. "We speak." He activated the repaired beacon, but not as a distress call. He sent a record, images, coordinates, testimony. The widows watched as Evan opened archived footage, burned cities, abandoned evacuation lanes, unanswered calls for help. He added their words translated and clear. "This will mark you," Kithra said. "Yes," Evan replied, "but it also marks the truth." The patrol signal responded within minutes. A voice filled the station, calm and distant. "Unregistered survivors, you are ordered to prepare for collection." Sale stepped forward. "We will not be collected," she said evenly. "We will be recognized." There was a pause. "Human," the voice said, shifting. "Your involvement is noted. Stand aside." Evan shook his head. "No," silence followed. "I will not decide for them," Evan continued. "But I will not abandon them either." That was enough. The patrol did not land. Instead, the signal cut, then reconnected with a different channel, a civilian oversight frequency. Kithra's breath caught. "They are questioning the record." Minutes passed like hours. Finally, a new message arrived. "Review initiated. Survivors are under provisional protection." The widow stood frozen. Protection, not mercy, not removal, protection. Sale turned to Evan, eyes shining. "You stood where empires would not." Evan smiled tiredly. "I just pressed send." But they knew better. Night fell gently. No alarms, no threats. The widows prepared a meal using their remaining supplies and shared it with Evan. This time they sat together. No distance, no fear. Marin spoke softly. "On our world, shelter was walls." She looked around the small station. "Here," she continued, "shelter is a person." Evan said nothing. His throat felt tight. Outside, stars appeared, quiet witnesses to a choice made without force. Far away, systems began to talk, reports spread, questions formed. And for the first time since their world burned, the widows were not alone in the universe. They were seen. They did not come like conquerors or collectors. They came slowly, carefully, holding position high above the valley as if asking permission before touching the world below. Their hulls carried the markings of a neutral interstellar council, not the cold symbols of the patrol that had once turned away. Evan stood outside the weather station with the four widows beside him. The air was calm now. The storm was only a memory written into the land. Sale watched the ships with steady eyes. "They came because of you." Evan shook his head. "They came because of the truth." But even as he said it, he knew the truth would never have traveled without someone willing to carry it. A small shuttle descended and landed at a respectful distance. Its door opened, and a council representative stepped out, unarmed, hands visible, posture open. "Survivors of House Viral," the representative said, voice clear. "You are formally recognized. Your losses are recorded. Your rights are restored." The widows closed their eyes, not in relief, in release. Years of silence broke in that moment, not with tears or cries, but with a quiet breath that none of them realized they had been holding. The representative turned to Evan. "Human engineer. Your actions are noted. You acted beyond duty." Evan shrugged slightly. "Someone had to listen." The widows were offered transport to a resettlement world, safe, green, full of others who had lost their homes, medical care, resources, a future that did not begin with running. They asked for time. That surprised the council. "We will decide," Sale said calmly. "Together." The shuttle withdrew. That night they sat inside the weather station one last time, the place that had been nothing more than rust and silence before it became something else. "This place saved us," Lyra said. "No," Kithra corrected gently. "A person did." They looked at Evan. "You gave us shelter," Marin said. "But more than that, you gave us choice." Evan felt the weight of those words. "I never wanted to replace what you lost," he said. "I just didn't want you to lose more." Silence followed. Then Sale spoke. "We will leave," she said, "but not forever." Evan looked up. "Our people are scattered," Sale continued. "They need a place to gather, a place that is not owned by those who failed us." She gestured to the station, the land beyond, the quiet sky. "This world is forgotten," she said, "but it does not have to be empty." Evan understood. In the weeks that followed, the weather station changed. Rescue ships brought supplies. Temporary shelters were raised. Communication arrays expanded. Word spread not as a broadcast but as an invitation. Displaced, forgotten, uncounted, they came. Evan repaired, built, taught. The widows organized, guided, remembered. Together they created something new, not a colony, not a refuge of pity, but a place of dignity. When the widows finally boarded the council transport, it was not goodbye. It was a beginning. Sail paused before entering the shuttle. "You should know," she said. "Our people will remember this." Evan smiled softly. "So will humans." The shuttle lifted into the sky. Evan watched until it vanished among the stars. He returned to the station, no longer empty. Months later, a message reached human space. Not a warning, not a demand, a story. 4 widows found shelter on a forgotten world. They found a human. And because of that, an entire people were no longer invisible. Across the galaxy, others listened. And humanity was remembered, not for power, but for standing still long enough to care.